Hey there, I guess we're at the end or the beginning of the year. I guess it really depends on when I get this out. I'm praying by January at the latest. 2025 is over, and what a year has it been for me personally. But who really gives a shit about that when I can info dump and talk about One Piece, right? Anyways, yeah, between the 26th and 28th anniversary for the anime and manga respectively, there was a lot that happened, from introductions in the manga, things that got adapted, you name it. So, similar to the dub video I made, which by the way, go watch it, I actually put some effort into it. I'm gonna make this a little unscripted with a lot of key talking points for both the anime and manga throughout the year, so if you're not caught up, you might not want to watch this. Also, I'm gonna let you guys know we're not just talking about those two. There was a lot that happened this year in terms of One Piece news, and for anyone unaware, I'm just gonna warn you right now, we're gonna get a little hashtag woke here, so just a little heads up. Anyways, let's get into it, starting with the anime. Actually, I lied. We're gonna talk about collaborations and merch because, yeah, well, this goes into the anime. We had a Dodgers fucking promotional anime video because there was a whole One Piece Dodgers night this year, which is already weird to say that One Piece is this much in the mainstream, but the weirdest thing, Luffy D. James.
As you can clearly see, LeBron James.
We had a Lakers collaboration. I don't know if you guys know this, I fucking love the Lakers. So this is, like, surreal. And, like, speaking of which, they're making, like, figures of, like, NBA teams, which... Guys, you see it? Anel did come back in a Thunders collaboration of all damn teams. It's a very weird and nice thing to see One Piece in such a mainstream perspective for America and the West now, after growing up with it with the 4Kids dub and all that, but when it comes to collaborations in the upcoming years, if I see an NFL one and I see Luffy wearing a Green Bay Packers jersey, just know it's so over. Alright, now we can start talking about some of the more important stuff to people watching this, the anime, and this is a really weird year for the anime, where, for one, we started off in a break with the Fishman Island remastered, which, I mean, it was alright, I guess. I don't know how I feel, besides the fact they cut the best joke in the entire series that was an actual cardinal sin, but Fishman Island Remastered, it was fine. I do think the pacing of it is a little sketchy. I don't like how that was handled. Some of the new audio and visuals they're alright. It's weird to see, especially after being used to the old Fishman Island so long. But the real talk is, yeah, April came around and One Piece finally came back with Egghead Part 2 to the end of the arc. As of where I'm recording this, the final episode's out, so overall, Part 2 of Egghead in the anime, it's fine. I'd argue it has great moments, though. There were some really interesting decisions with it. For one, yeah, I know, the Sanji hate from Toei, whatever, we've dealt with that since God knows how long. It's basically Sakura from Studio Period again. Is that how you say Period? Period? I turn it multiple ways. Whatever. Big thing with it is the Kuma flashback, which, here we go, we're gonna talk about the dub here. I know people don't like the dub, fuck you, whatever, here we go. The dub really nailed it out of the park, especially with the Kuma flashback. I've said it before, like in a dub video, by the way, watch that again, another self-promotion. I've always been indifferent on Dragon and Kuma, where I was like, I need to see them in key moments. Granted, with Dragon, in like 2 years, we'll probably see it. Well, we'll get into that, but, you know, I think his dub actor is doing a lot better of a performance now, as he's getting more and more focus. Kuma is a fucking highlight, hands down. Like, I love his dub direction. In fact, the original is just as great, but the happy birthday Bonnie moment, that shit had me bawling, even seeing it a third time at this point. It's just that good.
I'd rather die! I can't lose anyone else! I won't lose anyone else!
Thank you, Vegapunk, for saving Bonnie. Could you pass on a message for me the next time you see her? Tell her Happy 10th birthday.
There is one thing about the dub I specifically want to talk about that I think is one of the most insane things about it that really is why I want to talk about the dub here for this year. I don't know if you guys know this, in the God Valley moment during Kuma's backstory, there's a certain interaction we hear where we get to hear the voice of Rox D. Zebek, who, he'll be talked about later by a lot, don't you worry, but the dub, I was watching it and I was like, I recognize this voice from somewhere. How do I recognize it? And then I just happened to see something on TikTok.
Pretty involved, and I'm honored because I didn't audition. They simply asked for me. The director asked for me to do the role,
Paul St. Peter making a video about how Toei reached out for him to play Rox D. Zebek. Kurama from Naruto, Xemnas from Kingdom Hearts. This is going to be a goddamn spectacle when we get to that Rox flashback in the anime in like 2 years. Going back into like the anime itself, I do think one of the weirdest parts about it is with the fact that it was on a break. We come back a few episodes later, we're already doing a freaking Chopper filler arc. Like, what is going on here? Like, what? We don't need these recaps. And that's where the weird stuff comes in with One Piece right now, because it's going seasonal after 26 years. See, it's the one hand, I'm really happy, like, we're gonna start Elbath off seasonal, where it's like, I know it's gonna suck not having it week to week. But on the other hand, it's like, they deserve it since we're so close, they want to just make sure that it's as good as possible. But also, like, why didn't they just come back with the anime being like, hey, yeah, we're doing 2 cores this year. First one's gonna be the Kuma flashback into the Kuma punch. Take a little break here, and then the rest of Egghead, so we don't have to do the Chopper, like, recap stuff. But whatever, we're past that. Overall, from some of the highlights, such as the Kuma run, him punching Saturn, the Gorosei summons, oh my god, genuinely some of the most insane animation. Not even just Saturn, I mean like all 5 of them, individuals and together, group-wise, so good. Highlight to me, despite the first instance, I really wanted it to be a highlight because in the second opening, which by the way, both openings are really good this year, I'm a little disappointed how they handled the Bonnie seeing Gear 5 Luffy for the first time. Like, I wish when you're called the Sun God, you have like a little bit of sun showing on you. But with the, second bit where he's like, hey, yeah, you can do it too, before she goes into the future where I can be the most free, that scene is probably the best scene of the whole year, besides with the hockey knot, which... Side tangent, I think this might have been one of the most insane years for slander in the community, and I don't mean against One Piece, I just mean against characters. Agenda Piece has been on fire, man.
我々世界政府の指揮下に置かせてもらう
We can finally talk about the manga, and you might notice the length of this video. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, though there is also something else that we're going to talk about when we get to it, about how One Piece has been impacting the world in a positive and really insane way. But anyways, with the manga, we got 1135 to 1169, though if you're a dirty fan translator reader like I am sometimes, technically 1170 question mark? I think the way we should do this is we're gonna talk about like the highlights, which I have some like key points, going there, because there is a lot, and we're gonna get right into it here. For example, we start off the year with Robin, Saul, and Chopper in the Elbath Library, kind of learning a little bit about the history, how there's an owl here that has a devil fruit that makes everything bigger in there, so like all the small books of Ohara were able to be bigger so the giants could read them. But first of all, Saul's there. There is something you must know about Elbath right here and now. It's kind of hashtag woke now in the sense that, well, there's not as much fighting. In fact, they're being taught to be, more scholarly, more passive, more peaceful, rather than these warriors of decades and centuries ago, which it's an interesting thing because you see some characters that are especially older kind of like being for it, but also at the same time just kind of being like, well, it's hard to change so much, where it's like traditionalism versus tradition and culture. Like, that's a very big theme with this arc, besides something else that we'll get into that I've noticed, or we get to that topic. But also speaking on that, we're learning more about Nika's lore, as this is a big idol for them. And there's something interesting about him, where it's like, what path is Nika going to bring in the future? Will it be destruction, freedom, renewal. Like, there's so many different interpretations to the Giants of how, like, Nika is as a character. Now, as I alluded to earlier with talking about Robin and Chopper, the crew is kind of split up throughout Elbaf. They're all kind of, like, learning their own thing, just doing whatever, just having a good time, and Luffy is still trying to find a key to free Loki. Zoro and Nami kind of catch wind. Roto ends up helping them because he's so infatuated with Nami and them. So he goes and takes them to the castle where he's like, oh, I know where the key is, I can get that for you. Now, while the OG3 make it to Harold's castle and just have some interesting developments, such as finding out a red-haired man incapacitated a lot of the guards, someone comes up to them, and then we cut into the next chapter, which is 1138, which, yeah, this is the big one. This is the big one. For one, that red-headed guy and another lady happen to go and find Loki and ask him to join the Holy Knights, which he absolutely refuses, but we learn the name of this guy, Figureland Shamrock, confirmed brother of Shanks and son of Garling, which... What the fuck? Yeah, this is insane. This also adds a whole lot of detail to the Reverie scene where we're still not even fully sure if that was Shanks or Shamrock that was talking about the pirate I need to talk about. Shamrock has something very interesting with him that absolutely destroyed a long-running theory about Blackbeard. He has a sword that ate the Cerberus devil fruit, which, I'm gonna be real, this is cool as shit. Now, kind of going and cutting back to Luffy and the crew, as they're exploring the castle, they happen to notice a photo of Harold, and he had horns, which even Roto is like, yeah, I don't really know what happened to that, but that's like ancient giant shit, I guess, as, you know, this mysterious man is approaching the castle more and he finally encounters them, but kind of cut back and forth. Gunko and Shamrock are like, whatever, let's just get out of here, let's call more Holy Knights, and then they cut back to Robin reading something, as well as Frankie seeing a mural, which... Okay, I don't want to talk about this at all, because I could be here for hours, but the Harley is one of the most insane fucking drops we've ever had in One Piece. Like, I don't even need to say much, there's just so much that can be said just from this photo alone. So let's continue into 1139 to 1143. Now, again, seeing more of the castle, we also happen to see something called an Abyss Summon Circle in the castle, which does allude to something far into the future for this year involving King Harold. Now, once this mysterious man that I've been talking about comes and he mentions, well, I know where the key is, but you gotta beat me for it, this dude is strong. Like, Mr. Ya here is strong, and he's also known as a mountain eater, which I know it's because he cut down a mountain, but the fact that he's married the Ripley of all people, oh, we all know what he means. We all know what he means. But as he's kicking their ass, even to the point where, like, Zoro interferes with Luffy versus this guy, a one-on-one, he's like, dude, I need to help you, Luffy. He's kicking their ass, and then the moment Luffy decides, I'm going Gear 5, fuck it, I gotta take this seriously, he gives up. He's just immediately like, alright, here's the key. Here's the key. Have fun. So, as this is going on, Sanji is made aware that the three of them went to the castle and eventually the underworld, so he and some of the other new giant pirates, like Gerd and them, decide, okay, let's go back there because why do they want to free Loki? What the fuck is going on there? On top of that, as Hillingham and Summers, the other Holy Knights, are summoned and Shamrock decides, I gotta swap you guys out, you three can handle it, I need to go back. We find out the Holy Land is in a turmoil? Which, the beginning of Elbaf, when we saw like something about Blackbeard and Dragon and talking about the Holy Land, it's interesting to hear that so much has happened so quickly, especially with one of the first messages we get with Elbaf, like at the end of last year, being like, don't stay too long in this island. So there's been a lot of theories that, okay, maybe time moves slower in Elbaf, so like a week could be happening in a day here or something like that. As they've gotten the key, Zoro and Luffy decide, okay, we're gonna go down to the underworld, we're gonna go free Loki. Gabon, or Mr. Ya at this point, is like, alright, you do you. If that's the case, and I happen to see you again, maybe I can give you some info that would be really useful to you, by the way. Once we see them get down there, Zoro's having some trust issues of Loki, which Zoro's character in the last few arcs has been really interesting, showing this doubt, not towards Luffy, but maybe to himself, that he's not sure if he can handle these insane, vast opponents that they're going to be dealing with. But it's also really interesting that specifically Zoro doesn't trust Loki when they're in a very, very similar introduction of how they meet Luffy, both being chained up and being like, hey, I'm timey, whatever. So, the crews reunite, and Loki is up after one of his shackles is broken off, and he uses a giant hammer to attack the main tree of Elbath, which sets it on fire, which, by the way, is its main weakness. I don't know if you know that trees can burn and that's not a good thing, but yeah, apparently that's how it works in One Piece. Anyways, yeah, the Holy Knights are now going crazy here as we see that they are trying to kidnap children from Elbath with their Devil Fruit, or the Holy Knight trio powers. I don't even know what their Devil Fruit ability is. With Gunko having an Arrow Fruit, which we'll get into that a little bit more once we see her in action against the Straw Hats that fight her. It's a really interesting and kind of busted Devil Fruit in theory. You have Killingham, who has like a dream Devil Fruit that basically they kind of showed off, like Summer's asleep in a little bit, and he's like, dude, I just want some fucking salt for my food. He dreams up salt, Killingham just grabs it, puts it on it. It doesn't taste like anything, but like he can just do that, I guess, so that's cool. And then you have Summers that has a Thorn Devil Fruit. Really interesting to see as it's played out, since it affects people in terms of how much they care and love for someone affected by the Thorn Devil Fruit, so cool. Anyways, with the crews reunited, Loki's done this. Luffy's still just like, no, trust me, he's fine, because he's still, like, injured, so he immediately stops after a little bit. And Haruden is like, well, no, this guy is a fucking bastard. He might be my brother, quote-unquote, but, like, he killed our dad. And immediately, Loki is just, like, looking over, and he's like, do you really think I killed Harold? Which even shows that, like, he's doubting it as well. He's like, dude, like, I don't know, like, did you kill Dad? Anyways, 11:44 to 11:49 time. Cutting around now, we go back to the Holy Knights, and they're causing a lot of shit, bringing up all these nightmares that these kids have been dreaming of, saying like what they're most afraid of. Gunko is just listening to New World by Brooks, so, she's a fan. I guess that's important info. It actually is, trust me. We go back to the Underworld, we see them helping Loki. Well, the Middle World's starting to fight these dream demons, and during that we learn, as they're healing, and God, poor Loki was getting absolutely abused by Luffy trying to help him eat. We find out he had an idol, kind of like how Luffy idolizes Shanks, which we'll find out who that man is, but it's very interesting. We see that Gunko is finally approached, like some of the Straw Hats being Jinbei, Brook, Nami, and Usopp, and they fight, and by the way, anyone that says Usopp is useless in this arc, dude, he immediately started shooting right at her, blew her up, and she just revived, so yeah, not just her, but all of these Holy Knights are fucking immortal, kind of like the Gorosei were, which is an interesting bit of knowledge to know once we get into further stuff. As this is going on, Summers is kind of broadcasting to everyone to just, hey, burn and destroy all of your culture and history, burn those books, and just give the kids to us for our army and the world government, or you guys can just all die. And as this is happening, Robin and Scopper Gabon are, they're fighting back with some of this, and we see that there's a little girl that's basically leading the cause, just apologizing to the whole country that she's willing to give up her whole life if it means it'll save, like, the school, the library, and all this, which, dude, this is just actually tragic as hell. This, like, genuinely upset me reading. I felt disgusting like this. As Saul is, fighting back as well, which, shoutouts to the fact Saul was actually still pretty strong. Like, I'm not a power scaler, but it's really cool to see that someone like Saul is still fighting. We see that he gets beat up by Summers, and as he's basically humiliating him, Robin just says, I'm done, fuck this, I'm gonna fight, and I can't tell you, anytime I see Robin fighting, it just reminds me that, dude, Oda, you gotta use her more. You are so hoeing out on her without using her more. Like, this is so cool seeing her, like, fight this guy that you can't really touch. But anyways, as we get through that, we start seeing that there's a kid that happens to be Gabon's. And the whole time he's like, please do not bring me up. Please don't bring me up. And of course, Colin, which, funny enough, if you recognize him, he's the kid that, one, fought Luffy earlier, and two, also was the kid that begged Shanks to let him on the crew. Yeah, he just gives up the moment that Gunko tries to target him because he has a future sight moment of him dying, and he literally just drops it. He's like, I am so sorry, Elbath, but dude, that's my kid. I don't care. And It's another theme of this arc that we'll get more and more into once I give my final thoughts of the year, but like, there's such a big family, like, father-child dynamic in this arc, and it's so heartbreaking to me. Gunko basically throws him down into the underworld, which shoutouts Chopper for rushing immediately into him and using the best point ballpoint. Then we see that there is something really interesting when this is happening, that Gunko is having, like, basically a war flashback as she's looking at Brooke, and she has history with Brooke. But then, you know, that doesn't matter because within seconds, we happen to see a, yeah, that's the great one. That's Emu. Emu is on fucking Elbath right now. Alright, so immediately Emu starts doing jack of all shits here with pulling a book and a gun out of a magic summoning circle. Look, I'm just gonna be real, I don't even know how to react to this, but immediately as Dory and Broggy try to fight Eam, we get something called Domi Reverse, which... Are you kidding? Eam can just turn people... Oh my god, this thing is a fucking menace. So there was a reason that we had the party at the beginning of the arc, because everything is going to absolute shit. Anyways, the Holy Knights are all going, causing chaos. We see killing him out of his dragon form, which... Yeah, put the bag back on, bro. Anyways, as this is going down in the underworld, Chopper saves Gabon, and Luffy somehow knows that they're falling, which, I'm gonna be real, I think this is probably the voice of all things, because if it was observation hockey, Sanji would have probably caught wind of it as well. Anyways, well, that's happening. Loki and this Mosa have a last conversation as of right now, where Mosa says something is happening there, which... In the off chance there is a fan theory going around currently that if Mosa is Shirahoshi, it could mean Fishman Island is being attacked, but that we'll get into theories later. Anyways, Gabon starts telling everyone in the underworld about what's going on before some emu hockey happens. And I really do love this, that Luffy just kind of has the same reaction he does with Rayleigh, where he's like, oh my god, you were on the Pirate King's crew? That's fucking sick. I know that, like, everything's going to shit here, but, like, that's cool. So, now that they're all together now, Gabon tells them there is a way to harm the Holy Knights, and that's with Conqueror's Haki, which, obviously Luffy is aware, but Zoro finds out in this sense now that he has Conqueror's Haki, which I'm gonna be real is pretty hilarious that Gabon calls his ass out for not even being aware. Though, I also think, gotta bring up fan translations here. Why did we make Luffy say these lines? Luffy, I'm begging you, please don't ever word it that way ever again. But, speaking of Luffy, we have a new Straw Hat. No, we don't. Luffy asked Loki to join the crew, as Gabon is basically telling Harden, hey, just let the last chain go, it's fine. I think he's gonna help us. And finally, Haruden just says, you know what? Fuck it. 3 minutes, that's all I'm giving you. So now we're finally in the sandwich flashback. You'll understand that meaning in a second. We start off with Jarul and Loki being called to the castle by Harold. I just know this is like completely unedited right here. I just realized I've been spelling it Harold and not with an A. Regardless, as the two enter the throne room, he's being stabbed by a ton of guards. But who cares? We're gonna cut away because we're seeing Gabon and Shanks just chilling in a hot tub. What the fuck is that on Shanks' arm? Hold on. Who cares? Anyways, we gotta learn about Harold here, because, yeah, we're in the sandwich flashback. We had our Loki bun, now we get our Harold meat. That sounds very bad out of context. But 100+ years in the past, we learn of how he was raised, and he was essentially a dick. Just like a typical war-hungry giant. Happened to meet Ida, who is Haruden's mom, who he thought was locked in a circus initially before she beat his ass for him, quote-unquote, saving her from them and being like, hey, like, these guys saved my life before, they're chill. Which makes Harold think, oh, people that aren't giants can be nice? We can be nice to people that aren't giants? I will say this, Harold's an interesting character. You get to see a lot of his, like, mentality go as he's slowly aging, learning more about, like, being less brutish and wanting to make Elbath more peaceful as atonement for the world of how war-hungry they were. However, as he wants to marry Ida, the elders of Elbath do not allow it because she is not an ancient giant such as him, so they kind of set him up with this girl named Astrid, which, by the way, this lady can burn in hell. She's Loki's mother, which I know, you might be like, oh, that's cool. No, she's a gold digger. I'm being 100% she's a gold digger. 63 years ago, the accursed prince Loki is finally born, and she throws him out the window because of his eyes being cursed. On top of that, when the guards ask her what the hell is she doing, she says, tell Harold that I had a miscarriage. I hate this lady so much. And what makes it even worse is that he climbs up from the underworld as a newborn infant. Yeah, you can't even, like, joke about this. Estrid is, like, genuinely the worst mother in One Piece. Like, congrats, Oda, you finally wrote a horrible mother. Anyways, Harold's allies in the world that he's been making over the years start supporting Elbaf after the Big Mom incident occurred, and Harold finally does meet Loki, who thankfully loves. He's like, this is my son, I'll love him. That's Loki. During this, there's a bit about some giants frozen in ice belonging to Galliera? Sorry, I don't have the actual name on here, but it's, it's Galliwa, and we find out that, yeah, this is most likely those giants that were frozen in Punk Hazard. What the fuck? We're getting a lore on that. Though, let's get back into flashback. Loki's childhood is basically him being a problem child. He starts doing shit for attention, and as he sees more and more mothers with their kids, he gets more depressed, and then he attempts to take his own life, falling off the middle world, and in the failure, he sobs. Before we can feel even more depressed about Loki, a voice calls out to him saying, hey kid, I got 2 questions for you. 1, is this Elbaf? And 2, do you know where I could find Harold? And this man that's speaking out to him, yeah, that's Rox D. Zabek, the father of Blackbeard, which you might be asking, well, how do you know that? Because this is your flashback. We have to know. This bit is like one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video, because you just have to be there for this kind of stuff week to week. Back to the facts, we see that Rox absolutely beats the shit out of Loki when he tries to fight him, though we get a little history lesson on Rox during this as... I called this. I cannot believe I called this as a joke. Granted, I was wrong about him having the slow snow fruit, but when they were like, oh, the Rox pirates don't work well together, I was like, there's no way he didn't just get his whole crew from a Davy back fight, which he did. But also, on top of that, this dude showed up at a reverie, threatened the lives of 5 kings in front of Emu. Yeah, you heard me right. He went to the fucking flower room and saw Emu. Oh yeah, by the way, Gunko's there. But he goes up there and he's like, oh, I'll be back. Don't you worry. I'll be back, my friend. Well, not friend, you're a fucking weird blob monster. But anyways, after his little booty call to Emu, he's running out of the reverie. He kills an admiral, clashes with Harold, which is how they met, since he was hiding as another nation's guard and they caught him and he was running. Now, in order to flee, you want to know what Rox does? He's the one that broke the gate of justice initially, which I just need to be real. This might be the most insane track record for a One Piece character. Like, not a power scaler by any means, but if this guy, alive or not, is not in your top 5 or 10, you might be smoking dicks, dude. We cut back to his encounter with Loki as he finds out, well, this is Harold's son, because Rox is fascinated with Harold, and he wants him on his crew so he can, quote-unquote, rule the world. Though, despite the many rejections throughout his life, they're still very good friends. In fact, I'd argue they're probably on a brotherly level. And now we start cutting around different eras and groups in the old age, which I know a lot of people are 50-50 on this, myself included, but I do like the fact we get to see a little bit of what the old era was like. And during this, the Kuja pirates were actually some of the most famous pirates out there because of Shaku Yaku. The way we learn about the Kuja pirates is that we cut over to an encounter that they had with the Roger pirates, as Roger was kind of into Shaku just like almost every other pirate in the world, though she had her sights set on one other guy, which I think is really cute that they show she was the one instigating the relationship with this note, like, come get me and all that. Like, that's cute. We cut back over to the Rocks pirates as we see them getting more and more people, such as Silver Axe, my girl Lin Lin, Kaido, my fucking goat, Captain John. Oh, I love this guy. He's a fucking fraud, but I love him. And they finally take over full-lead Islander Hachinosu, depending on the translation. And the crew is a goddamn mess, just like what the government said. For once, the propaganda wasn't propaganda. because like these dudes are always butting heads. You have stuff like Shiki and Silver Axe starting shit constantly, Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard just starting all this shit to get treasure. It's so funny in the best way possible. But we get some updates on Herald's progress with the world government, where they have some giants in the Marines, such as John Giant. Oh, these guys are very unique with name. The Gorosei are basically ordering, as a result of their fear of Herald and Rox Dizabek possibly aligning, that if Herald wants Elbaf to be involved with the world government and the Reverie, kill Rox Dizabek, which Satosugu wishes it was this toxic of a yaoi relationship. Regardless, as the years are going by, Shaki finally opens her famous bar that we saw from Sabaody, but initially on Hachinosu. Because of this, a lot of crews like to visit this island, where she has one big rule that she's implemented, and it's no fighting! Which I love, because we see that Roger's crew comes up, everyone's just like, why the hell is he here? He's just like, hey, it's me, your lover? Oh, you rocks. What's up, bro? But they have some weird-ass beef, and it's so funny, because you can tell it's because they're both in this Shaki, which we'll get into later, which I think is very funny on Rox's side. Rox and Herald are reunited again, where Herald tells Rox he wants to join the world government, which pisses Rox off, rightfully so. Another conversation is brewing in the Gorosei's main chambers with Saint Figaro and Garling, as he brings up a good spot for their next game, God Valley. Oh god, this is a fun time, because we're about to start God Valley here. I know, it's actually unreal we're getting here. Now, before we do tackle God Valley here, and apologies if I sound a little off, I'm a little sick as of recording this, I want to talk about the fact there's been a lot of political outrage and protesting throughout the entire world, whether it's in America, Europe, Asia, but throughout a lot of these, the Straw Hat Jolly Roger has been spotted at a lot of these protests. Majority in Asia, don't get me wrong, but it's been spotted. And it leads me to talk about this really quickly, as it's been an on and off discussion for years, but it's been very, very much expanding throughout 2025. But yes, One Piece is a political series. For fuck's sake, the first page of the series is a political execution. You have Drum Island, which is an arc about free access to healthcare, Alabasta being a whole political coup caused by misinformation, Fishmen and now Giants being oppressed by the government using racial stereotypes against them, such as with Fishmen being seen as subhumans and Giants seen as violent brutes. Like, there's a lot to it. And finally, the reason I bring this one up last is fucking Nico Robin, her whole life being a genocide survivor, is seen as a devil for surviving and wanting to learn history, which, look, you might call this a stretch, and I'm not going to get too far into it. You can probably figure out my side from this, but when you bring up genocide in One Piece, and then we have currently, as we're about to talk to with God Valley, a whole clan of people being oppressed and killed in a genocide just for who they are, in a place called God Valley, mind you. Keep that name in mind. I feel like, especially with what's going on in the Middle East, this might have been a little intentional. Now, I'm not calling Oda some woke savior or anything. I mean, don't get me started on his Watsky shit, but I do feel like it's intentional that he brings this up, especially during this time of age, similar to how Wano was, that he brought up, like, opening the borders around one of the most xenophobic eras of Japan since World War II. It just feels interesting. Alright, now that I've got my golden hair down and we're not in SSJW right now, let's actually talk about God Valley. This was all started similar to a certain Greek myth, where Shaki was kidnapped because Wang Ji here gave her up to the world government, and he ended up killing Don Marlin in the process, which, by the way, I want to bring this up. I know I mentioned theories at the end, but there's no doubt this dude is not related to Caribou and Korobu, right? Like, we all agree there's something there. But also, can I say fuck Figaro and Garling for just casually killing his wife after immediately being like, oh yeah, no, the Celestial Dragons are holding their, like, murder game here. You're definitely gonna be one targeted. I want my kids back. Bye. Like, what a dick. Anyways, we see Marine troops being told, hey, go and tranquilize some innocent civilians, do whatever you want, just don't kill them, that's for the Celestial Dragons to do, though one Marine is standing up saying that this is a little off, and it's Monkey D. Dragon. I'm gonna be real, I was not expecting Dragon to do anything quite yet, but oh my god, we already have immediate, like, me having a reverse 180 on Dragon. This is unheard of for me. My slander of Dragon has to end now. Anyways, we also find out as we see some of the innocents that are being taken to God Valley to be hunted, such as the slaves. It was Ginny that leaked out all the info of Shocky and the Devil Fruits to Morgans. By the way, look at this guy, he's got that shit on. But that's actually what got Morgans to be such a big player in the world, and how he even started his big news. And God, everyone is here going to God Valley, from Rox to Roger to even Garp, which we'll get into Garp later. Though, on the way there, Rox meets up with Harold one last time when he drops one of the biggest bombshells I didn't expect. My name's actually Davy Diesenbeck. This, well, especially now knowing like what they were doing at God Valley with the Davy clan, it makes sense, but also it is such an insane drop to have. I mean, for one, he's from God Valley. 2, his wife and child, being Teach, are there. And 3, does that mean that Teach has like 3 different names? Okay, that's a little confusing. We'll get into that one day. So yes, this is in fact what Garling leaked to the Gorosei, being that the Davy clan, which we find out a little bit later that Ima's been hunting them, this is where they've been. So, Dragon, going back to this, is finding and attempting to save the Figureland children as he finds the wife dying in a house. Well, we see that the hunting game has begun, and oh my god, this first page alone is actually vile. Like, reading some of this dialogue made me feel nauseous from how disgusting it is. Anyways, at one point, Dragon actually ends up saving Kuma. Like, seriously, can I say that Dragon is the real MVP of God Valley? Because the people that he saved in this arc and moment are some of the most important people, not just to the world, but specifically to his future-born son's life. Like, that is insane. From Rox's crew to Roger's crew to even the Holy Knights and Garp, yes. Regardless, Rox is looking for, obviously, his family, his wife and child. Roger and Rayleigh are going right in to save Shaki. Dragon is getting thrown everywhere, which he's essentially like how Luffy was during Marineford, if you want to give a good parallel. And it causes him to lose Shamrock to a Holy Knight in a fight, which is when Whitebeard, Lin, and Kaido are fighting this Holy Knight, which Garp drops in, and I'm not gonna lie, I gotta bring up the fan scans here. Seeing Lin say fuck is honestly hilarious. On the other side of the island, Rayleigh finally discovers where Shaki is being held and saves her from the nasty misogynistic bastard known as Summers. Seriously, I cannot describe my disdain for this fucking nasty man. On that note, Shaki and Rayleigh finally reunite, and this is the moment that they both truly fall in love with each other, which I think is actually an adorable sequence here. On another note, we see that Lin and Ivankov have made contact where she gets the dragon fruit from him, and during this we actually see that something I was absolutely terrified to see how it was going to be handled, but I'm very glad I was wrong on. Garp is seeing everything going on, and he's absolutely disgusted that he was sent here, and knowing that the world government is completely aware of what's going on. He even contacts Sengoku, which, can I say Sengoku is a true fucking bum? Regardless, we go back to Rox and see that he is having to kill his own family as he is saving his wife and Teach before he is intercepted, and he one-shots Garling. I'm sorry, this is actually hilarious, especially with how much a lot of the community was trying to hype up Garling being like, "Oh dude, wait until you see him at God Valley," and it's just him getting his shit rocked. On the note of someone getting their shit rocked, Kaida decides to club Lin, steal the fish fruit from her, and eat it with this shit-eating grin on his face. And I want you to keep in mind, canonically, devil fruits taste absolutely vile. We have seen it so many times, and look at this smirky as well, Lin is just pissed. Probably one of my favorite dynamics of this entire flashback. All the while this is going on, Kuma is seen throughout the flashback still helping other people with the pawpaw fruit to escape, which, again, it makes me love Kuma even more. He had every opportunity to just flee right away, and he says, no, I'm gonna help as many people as I can before we get out of here, Ginny and Eva. Though Saturn and Emu are communicating. Oh yeah, by the way, Saturn is here. Did I mention that? And he is taken over by Emu, so no, it's not just Gunko that can be taken over, and every big name is there to see this happen, which there is a lot to discuss here, but I think the biggest thing is that Rox claims Emu is the world as they're all just confused about Eam. Though Rox, I love this guy. Again, he's one of my top 10 right now because he just shit talks Eam to his face, being like, oh yeah, you remember Davy Jones, was he the original king? And like, this is pissing off Eam so much. Oh yeah, side note, my fraud is actually Jika, by the way. He has Kid's Devil Fruit. During this, we have everyone that is a major player in the modern age of One Piece into a 6-way double-page spread attack on Eam, and it goes so fucking hard. And in the process, the hockey impact hits Dragon and he loses Shanks, which I feel so bad for Dragon here. He is sobbing in the same way that Luffy during Sabaody was, but I can't even save 2 kids. What is wrong with me? How could I be a Marine or a hero? Which, this is absolutely what radicalized him. I don't care what anyone says. Ohara was the true, like, final bit where he's like, fuck it, we're going against the world government, but this is where he was like, nah, fuck the world government, though. Sadly, one of the biggest I predicted this moments happens, and Imu, while fighting Rox, Domi reverses the man and makes him with the command of kill your wife and child. Oh my god, dude, this is, again, this is so fucked up and just shows how the world government, let alone Eam and the Gorosei and Holy Knights are truly in terms of their morals. It's awful. Unlike the Giants during our modern age, Rox is still fighting back through this Domi Reversi. Like, he still has his consciousness, and using this last bit of consciousness, he is making Eam more and more immaturely pissed, calling Davy Jones the initial king of the world, which I do think it's very interesting to see Eam so immature and lashing out about this, which his last words before Rox loses his full consciousness are shit-talking Harold, saying it's so easy to manipulate the Giants to work for the world government, which, again, this is why I love Rox. It's making him livid to hear one of his best friends talk so poorly about, where as he's losing consciousness, he's starting to fight everyone under this Reversi, which I do have to say, I think it is extremely tragic to see how Edward, Lin-Lin, and Kaido are reacting to this, as, you know, obviously he's not talking truly, kind of like how some of the Giants were talking, being like, oh, I got this demonic power, who cares anymore, I love fighting, like, they're like, oh, so you really didn't care about us. And you can see he's still struggling, even throughout this, while being unconscious, to say yes, that he didn't care about them, especially Whitebeard. And it explains so much about why Lin-Lin and Kaido are just who they are as people in the modern age. But as this is going on, Kuma, my fucking MVP besides Dragon here, saves Teach and his mother. Well, Rox tries attacking them, which, interesting to note that Eris is aware that he lost to Imu. So, were the Davies aware that Nerona Imu still existed? Though, now we finally get to the big thing that was the propaganda we've known since the moment God Valley was brought up. Roger Garp versus Rox. In what seems to be a variety of the voice of all things, he's begging them to kill him. As they're fighting, all the Rox pirates are finally just splitting off, being like, you know what, screw this, I don't care anymore. But we have probably the worst joke that ever come out of this series, an 18-year-in-the-making Marco Polo joke. This man, known as Polo, that we don't have confirmation he's his dad, but dude, this is definitely a relative of Marco, and I think that is hilarious that he's like, hey, Edward, Newgate, right? Can I join you, bro? So they leave. And the power of hockey beats Rox, which I'll give it this now that we're at the end of the God Valley talk. My biggest complaints with it are, I feel it's anticlimactic how it ends with, you know, oh, just use more hockey. I am so disappointed at how underutilized Stussy and Gloriosa were used in this, when they're like just as powerful as Lin-Lin, all these other characters, and it's like, they cared about Shocky, and you hardly see them except for one fucking panel of Stussy and Gloriosa later on at the end, but yeah, that's God Valley. If I had to rate God Valley personally, I'd say it's a strong 7, light 8. I got my own issues with it, but I feel like once it's animated, a lot of them will be changed. But now we get into post God Valley and the final chapters of this after almost 50 minutes. Before leaving God Valley, however, we do have a question that is finally answered. Why is Figurlin Garling seen as such a big figure in these inbred fucks known as the Celestial Dragons? Well, he killed Rox. in a fraudulent way as Rox is just barely clinging on to life after he lost his consciousness, and he deals the final blow to this dying man. Outside of God Valley, we see Roger regaining consciousness, seeing that Shocky is safe, relieved, though they hear some crying from a chest, and yeah, it's Shanks. He's there. He actually made it into a chest when the dragon lost him. Going around the entire sea, we start seeing how God Valley is getting received, with the world absolutely in joy that Roxy Zabek is dead. Garp, however, is absolutely fucking livid at Sengoku, which, again, fuck this man, just saying, oh, just ignore it and turn a blind eye to everything you've seen. Like, I don't blame Garp for being absolutely pissed at this man. To the Elbathian giants, however, it is not going well. Loki is absolutely going through it, as he really did believe that Rox was the reincarnation of Sun God Nika, but oh my god, Harold is going through it with grief over Rox. Like, I don't know how else to explain this, and we're gonna cut a little bit around here, but he goes up to the world government, assumedly marriage law, saying, you can make me a slave, please just let the giants be represented, and it's like, dude, are you stupid? Going back to Garp, however, we see him now at a detention hall for Marines, which, guess who's there? It's Dragon, aka I don't want to kill people here, so I'm a bad Marine, which Dragon rightfully is livid as well at his father, being like, I hate you, how could you defend this kind of shit? Garp can't even argue against it, he's just like, yeah, I know, and he just lets him go. He frees him from this detention hall, and that's the end of Dragon with the Marines. Now back to our Harold sandwich here, we cut away to see after his display in front of this Navy base, which again, it could be Marriage Law, it could be Marineford. Eam was actually listening to it, so he's just like, okay, you want to be a slave? I'll make you a holy knight on the down low. So giants are starting to get more positive reps from the people that are oppressing them as the years go up. Harold's time in the holy knight and his rank in the holy knights begins to go up further as he does get a covenant tattoo, which there's a little lore that is sprinkled throughout the next few chapters about how these abyssal ranks go, but what makes this more interesting is Shanks is with the Holy Knights for a bit, but it's okay since he was doing some double agent shit against them, like assisting Fisher Tiger during his breakout, which there's a lot of talk about why that's good and bad. I think it's a double-edged sword where it's like the one hand, it makes more logical sense that, you know, Fisher Tiger then climbed the Red Line, that was something that he just told his crewmates and like Neptune and all of them to be like, yeah, I wasn't a slave, see, I actually got out, but it kind of diminishes a little bit more of the efforts knowing this. It's complicated, it could be a retcon, we just gotta see how it plays out, but going into Neptune again, him and Harold were actually pretty good friends, which this is where more of that Mosa being Shirahoshi talk comes in, as there is a line here that kind of implies him saying something about like Shaggy, like, oh, your daughter might have shaggy hair, which in the fucking official translation, he's calling her Shaggy instead of Mosa, so there's that bit there which adds. At the same time, we see that Harold's having Saul begin to build the school and library to get more generations less violent and more scholarly. Before we do catch up with Harold, Loki, and their whole situation, I want to bring up Shanks, as yes, him and Gabon were there during the whole situation that occurs in a bit here with Harold. The fact that Shanks has the eye scar even during his time as a Holy Knight, as well as having a decent relationship with Shamrock, is a very interesting thing to note that makes me really curious on his backstory that we'll eventually get. Alright guys, it's finally here. Let's end this flashback. Let's start this off with some tragedy, as sadly Ida is slowly dying as she was poisoned by giants from Esther's home village. And as a result, Loki goes on a full rampage before she dies, which this is why he was seen as someone that burned down a village. It was him protecting his true mother, which he says, Ida is the only mother I'll ever know. And it does not stop there, because the very next chapter, Ida dies, and one of her last things she says to Harold is, you've done more than enough for giants, you don't have to work for the world government, and what does this dumbass do? He goes to achieve the highest holy rank knight days later, and he goes face to face with Eam before agreeing to make an abyss seal in the castle of Elbath. I have a lot of conflicting thoughts about Harold, but the one thing I will say more than anything, this is a man that has been absolutely ruined by grief. It is so so goddamn hard to watch. And on top of that, once he makes the seal, Ian basically goes, hey, guess what? Shock of the Void Century, I want all the giants for military power and nothing else. Non-surprisingly shocked by this news, Harold, in a last-ditch effort, as again with this Abyss seal he can't truly disobey Eam, calls for his men to chain him up, call Jarul and Loki to the castle, so finally, that 3 minutes can begin, and we start seeing everything go to shit as he is further and further being controlled by this Abyss seal, attacking everyone, even claiming he wants this legendary devil fruit for himself, and Loki ends up running to go grab it, and that we're in, well, as of recording this, it's, I guess, officially out now. I don't know. Yeah, but we're using fan scans here. I'm sorry, but I'll use officials once this is out. Loki hears rumbling in the chamber and is attacked by Ragnir the hammer, which, before breaking his own hammer, incapacitates it to reveal that it is actually a squirrel. Honestly, I can't even be mad. In fact, it's hilarious with the idea of, hey, is it a squirrel that ate a hammer devil fruit, or is it a hammer that ate a squirrel devil fruit, which is probably a mythical Zoan? Cut back, we finally see that Loki is able to eat this devil fruit, which is revealed to, I honestly have no idea what this could be, maybe Nichad? I'm not sure, but he finally does end up taking down Harold, in the process killing him, which, similar to how Rox had slight control of his psyche before he passed away, Harold has a little bit, and he says, hey, I'm proud of you for doing what you did for Ida. I appreciate it. No, I love you too, son. Loki obviously is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I'm your son, and you're making me kill you? This is awful. And in a last double-page spread of the year, he's dead. Rest in peace, Harold. I, again, have a lot of conflicting thoughts about Harold, but overall, I think he's a great written character, and with that, 2025 for the manga is over. Oh my god, can you believe it? We're finally done with One Piece. Oh yeah, it's not even close to over, and we're gonna cut right back to Luffy, hopefully, in 2026. With that being said, I think this is one of the best years for One Piece, both manga and anime-wise. I do, of course, have some issues with how some characters like Gloriosa and Stussy were handled, doing jack shit besides swooning for men. But also, I gotta say, Rox D. Zebek, or Davy D. Zebek, whatever the fuck we want to call him now, one of the best characters Oda has written in a long time, just for like 10 to 12 chapters. Like, this dude was truly a... I loved seeing his dynamic with Whitebeard. The old era is so fun to see, and I cannot wait to see what happens with the setup that we have for 2026 now. That being said, let me tell you my predictions for next year. I think the obvious one is that Luffy is going to finally encounter Eam, given everything that happened. I don't think it's gonna like actually be like, oh, this is truly Luffy versus Eam. It's gonna just be a quick fight. I don't think it's gonna result in anyone like winning or losing. I think Eam's gonna retreat because they'll be able to get some of the giant kids out of there, and it's just gonna be mayhem from there. On top of that, I do think, going back on that Sanji bit, I think Sanji and Zoro are going to fight Dory and Bragi, and Sanji might have a Conqueror's Haki moment where they would make their own modern day of Hikaku sovereignty. I think it would just be a really cool idea. Now, this is one thing that, because of Oda's end of the year Jump Festa message did come out after I scripted this, I was able to read, and it's kind of confirmed. We have no idea knowing how Oda is, but apparently we're gonna get some stuff about the man marked by flames. I think Gabon's gonna bring it out, which that's gonna be an interesting tie around to finally see what this guy looks like or know anything about him. And my final prediction is Usopp's gonna get his moment in Elbaf, and it's gonna involve Ragnir liking pop greens. Just trust me on this, it's gonna be how he's able to wield it once, and that's it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed One Piece in 2025 as much as I did, and whenever I make my next video, it's gonna be a bit of a long one, because we're looking at